If on the first line of your email or your DM you say, "Oh my gosh, thank you so much. I've been looking for somebody to help me. I can't afford my rent," the conversation has ended before it began. And I'm very serious. Like, I have to say this straight and direct because I don't think some people are understanding the dire straits that we are in when it comes to affordable housing. A loan officer can't help make housing affordable. If you can't afford your rent, let's say your rent is $1,500. If you can't afford that, what do you expect the bank to do about that? Nothing. We can't. Housing is going to be more expensive than your rent. When you start talking about budgeting for a house, you're talking about rent, mortgage. It doesn't go rent, mortgage. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
Now that was hilarious, but yeah, she's right. She is right. People have this delusion where they feel like just because you have a mortgage, everything is straight, you're good. Yes, I'm not paying rent. Which, I'll be honest with you, in some places, yes, it might be better to get a house as far as like the mortgage might be cheaper. By all means, go ahead. That is 100% true. But there's a thing about this that people just fail to understand. And I understand what it is, right? You get so excited you want to get a house and you're saying, that's my mortgage. I'm good. Perfect. I'm fine. You're forgetting a whole lot of things here, okay? Number one, an escrow account. If you have an escrow account, now you need to pay homeowners insurance. That's part of the escrow account. And you need to pay property taxes. And then you start saying to yourself, wait a minute, I thought my mortgage was $1,400. Yeah, it is. Your interest and your principal, it's $1,400. Well, why is your payment, $2,000? Well, something called the escrow account, which is your property insurance and is also your homeowner's insurance, right? Sorry, property taxes and homeowner's insurance. It's all bundled up in there. Okay, fine. A few years go by. Why is it going up? Because property taxes go up. Because your insurance went up. You see, people have this delusion that they think that just getting a house is like everything is gonna be solved and everything's gonna be fixed and like the payment you're paying is like a fixed payment and that's great. It might say on your mortgage. Your mortgage is you might get a fixed rate. I'm not saying you might, you should. No variable rates, okay? We're not doing this variable rate nonsense, fixed rates. You get a mortgage, it's a fixed rate. That's exactly true. It is fixed. That's how much money you're going to get. You know your interest rate is not going to change. You know how long it'll take for you to pay it off. That's great. But there's so many things that's involved with getting a house, okay? There's things in your house that also need to get repaired or need to get replaced, okay? One of them being your roof. A roof is like every 15 to 20 years. In some places, it costs 15 to 20,000, right? Or even more than that in some places. And to make this math as simple as possible, let me try to do this in my head in this video. Let's say, for example, it costs $10,000 to do a new roof, and you need to get it done in, let's say, 10 years, you need to get it done, right? So basically, on a yearly basis, that's $1,000 each year, right? If you amortize that amount, it's like $1,000 a year, right? Divide that by 12 is like what? That's like 500? No, it's like no 300, 100. It's like a little under $100 a month. So that's also how much money you're paying as well, like $8 a month. 80? Let's say 80. Like $80 a month that you're paying now on top of your mortgage payment, right? Because that's something that's coming up. You have to pay for your roof. When you start thinking that way, like things I gotta pay for, and you break it down to monthly basis, then you get a good idea about how much money it costs for a house. All those renovations you want to do, all those repairs you want to do, all these things you want to do, break it down to a monthly basis and you see how expensive it is. Some things you cannot dodge. You're going to get repairs in your house. Your water heater, got to get replaced. Your HVAC will need to get replaced. And your roof will need to get replaced. These three things will certainly need to get replaced. And it doesn't even end. You want to get a pool? I live in Florida. People love pools. Now you got to pay for the maintenance of a pool, right? In my case, I pay $140 a month for them to maintenance my pool. That's more than rent now. We're adding that to the mortgage with the escrow account. Now it's going up. You see, my grass. We live in Florida. No one likes what you're doing their grass. I know you want to say, you could just do it yourself. Yeah, I know I could. But I got a house to be extremely lazy. I don't want to cut my grass. It's hot outside. I don't want to deal with it. I don't cut my grass. So I know this is my choice. But it's still a choice, right? You prefer to not cut your grass. If you're renting, you're not cutting grass. So if you get a house, you got to pay someone to cut your grass. I pay $150 on top of that. So as you see, it's accumulating. And if you're struggling with rent, as she said, a house is not going to fix that. A house is not going to fix that solution at all. And this is not one of these videos, okay, guys? So please hear me out. This is not one of these videos that's going to tell you that home ownership is bad. Home ownership is awesome, right? But it takes time and it takes patience, and it's a process to build up to it. That way you'll become house poor. You don't want to be house poor. That's the worst case situation. If you get an apartment and you're struggling with rent and you're like, man, I went way over on rent. This is difficult. You have 1 year, you're done, you leave, you're gone. That's not necessarily the case with a house. Yes, you can sell a house. Yes, you can. But people love to hold on to the house because they really love their house and have too much pride to sell the house. That's by far the hardest thing for people to do, is to admit that they got too much house, their payment is too high, and they don't want to sell it because they're embarrassed or whatever the case may be. So they go to work, complain about work, struggling, and all you're doing really is going to work to pay for your mortgage, your repairs, all this stuff associated with a house. A house is not, as nice as everyone says it is, man. It really isn't. For some people, it's a blessing. It's an awesome thing to have a house. But for some people, it's a curse. And it's really not that hard to get into that. Like when you apply for a mortgage and you speak to someone like her, like a mortgage broker, they're trying to get you into a house based upon the interest. Based upon the mortgage. That's it, the mortgage payment. That is it, right? That's part of the calculation to how much you can actually afford. They're not looking into the cost of the roof. They're not looking at the escrow or the property taxes, all that stuff. They're not looking at any of that. They're looking strictly at the mortgage. And that's why people get into so much trouble. Happened to me, okay? I didn't get into trouble, but the payment that I thought I was going to pay, they gave me like a guesstimate how much my escrow was going to be, it ended up being completely different. And completely different meaning a lot higher, because the taxes that they calculated on my payments, right, for the property taxes was from the previous owner who had an exemption. So they assumed I was get the same exception, and I didn't. And when that changed, the property tax went up like almost $3,000 to $4,000. So my payment jumped up tremendously because of that. So as you see, she's right, and I love the fact she did that video. Do not always think that mortgage is the best option to go. Okay, for some people, rent is the best. I know you're gonna be saying you throw money away, but you throw money away one way or another. Okay, you're gonna be throwing money away. And yes, a home, that's your asset, and that's great. You can build that equity, that's cool. But then you're gonna be just equity rich, but cash poor. You don't want to live 20 years struggling just to hold on to a house to say, I got the equity, which then you discover you cannot get that equity until you actually sell the home, and then you have to find somewhere else to live. You see, there's a dilemma. It's a catch-22 when it comes to it. So just be smart, be patient, be wise. A house is in your future if that's what you really want, but just understand there's a lot of fixed costs that's associated with it, and if you pay attention to those costs, then you will be ready and prepared to buy a house.